Their online menus made it clear that this was the place to go. And oh my gosh, did I have a feast. Hey there, travelers. I'm Nick. I'm not Laura. And if you caught my last video, which is right here, you'll see all about my flights back and forth to London. But this video is going to be all about the things I did while I was in London. So, if you haven't watched that video, take a break, go see that other video, come back here, and we'll talk about what happened while I was there. As I mentioned in the last video, Laura and I have traveled to the UK many times, but this was the first time I was going with our dietary restrictions, and I really wanted to see what it would be like if the whole family were here. It was great. Our first stop was Dishoom, which is an Indian restaurant, and I went to the Carnaby location, but Dishoom actually has 8 locations across the entire UK, but many of them are right there in the Westminster area. It's got a fun, trendy vibe, and the wait to get in is not insignificant. I was lucky enough to have made a reservation, and fortunately, I had no wait upon arrival. Full disclosure, when people ask me about eating Indian food, I am not usually a huge fan. So this was a little bit of a leap for me. I did some research, and the #1 option for gluten-free, dairy-free dining in the London area came up as Dishoom. So I said, okay, I'm gonna give it a chance, and I'm gonna see what it's like. It also just so happened that it was a block and a half away from the show I was seeing that night. Their online menus made it clear that this was the place to go. They had a regular menu, a gluten-free menu, a dairy-free menu, a vegan menu, and then also once we were there, the waitstaff was super on top of what our restrictions were. The items came out with allergen flags already in them, and the staff introduced each item and was very clear about which ones were perfect for me and which ones may have had any issues. I will say many restaurants have figured out how to do single restrictions really well. It's restaurants that can go to the next level, that are able to coordinate multiple restrictions at the same time, that really set themselves as a class apart. And this is something that Dishoom was able to do. So I got both menus and I actually put them right next to each other and I said, okay, what are the things that I can find on both of these menus? My server confirmed that my options would work, and oh my gosh, did I have a feast. Masala prawns, I will be honest that I do eat some shellfish, which Laura does not do. Jasmine rice, chili broccoli salad, kachumber, chicken tikka, amazing gunpowder potatoes, and a watermelon sherbet. All gluten-free, all dairy-free, but completely filled with flavor. This was topped off by a basmati kheer, which is basically a rice pudding with like a crisp sugar top, kind of like you would have on a creme brulee. It was amazing. I was already starting to think about how I could get Laura and the kids over to the UK to have a meal just like this. That night's show was the London summer production of Beauty and the Beast. Now this is a show that I'm really familiar with and have seen a ton of times, but this is a brand new production. And it's big, it's colorful, it's bright, and it has a couple of new twists to it that were really fantastic. If you get a chance to see it this summer, I definitely encourage it. The next morning, I went over to Fortnum and Mason. I actually spent a lot of time in Fortnum and Mason as a kid. I had the opportunity to live in London for a few months in the 80s, and this was my mom's and my go-to place. It is the quintessential London afternoon tea, and there is no better spot when looking for jams, jellies, preserves, curds, honey, anything that you might want to put on a piece of toast. I also took this opportunity to take a look at the tea room upstairs, which has this amazing Victorian elegance mixed with the modern city that it's in. I'll be honest that their menu doesn't work perfectly for me. They do an absolutely amazing job with a gluten-free, a vegan, and a dairy-free version of their menus. Gluten-free scones, finger sandwiches, and pastries. And if you have only one of those allergies, you're all set. But it's when you have more than one that things start getting a little complex. I think if you have more than one allergy at a time, it stops being that afternoon tea that you picture and turns into something a little bit different. Following this, my friend and I saw a production of Cabaret as an afternoon matinee. It was absolutely amazing. It was immersive and so special in the way that it was directed. They actually required that we take our phones out before we entered the theater, and they put a sticker right over the camera on our phones to make sure that we didn't do any recording. I still have little bits of sticker on the back of my phone. The sticker on the back means that, well, I don't have any video to show you. So take my word for it, it was a remarkable production. Following that, we walked right along the river, and we ended up going to a place called Indigo at 1 Aldwych. Now, let me tell you a story. Every colleague that I spoke to over in London and said that we would be going to Indigo at 1 Aldwych, they basically were like, oh, it's okay, but it feels a little off. And I think I have a theory why. Very, very discreetly at the bottom of the menu, you're gonna find that all items at Indigo are gluten-free and dairy-free. But they don't do a very good job of promoting it, and so therefore anyone who is showing up there to have a regular meal is probably going to find that things are a little bit off. Me, I had an amazing meal. Smoked trout starter, they did a bread service, which was a sourdough bread with a bacon crusted butter. I had this pork dish, and there was also a serving of polenta next to it that was really delicious, and another kind of pudding with a crisp sugar top on top of it. This was all part of a pre-theater menu that was actually a very reasonable price, and it ensured that in this narrow window of time between the matinee that we went to and the evening show we were about to go to, that we were able to have our 3-course dinner and be able to make it in time for the show. All to say, it was such a relief to be able to sit down and have anything on the menu that we wanted. Not to have to worry about what our restrictions were, not to have to worry about explaining it. It is an ideal menu for somebody who it deals with restrictions like me and my family do. That night, I attended a show with Christopher Lloyd. Yes, that Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future. Okay, he wasn't like sitting next to me or like we didn't go together, but we were both in the theater at the same time. And what show did we see? Well, we saw the musical version of Back to the Future. There's not a lot to say about the show. It's fun, but really you're there for the 30 seconds of the DeLorean at the end of the show. I hope I haven't ruined anything for you, but if you've seen the movie, it's pretty much exactly the same thing.
Christopher Lloyd.
Okay, the last night of the trip was not a regular West End show. We actually had to take the tube for about 45 minutes outside of town to do something called Abba Voyage. And it was honestly the highlight of our trip. It wasn't a musical, it was like a concert meets 3D movie. This was basically an opportunity to see ABBA as you would have seen them 40 years ago. This completely redone CGI version of a concert with amazing lighting and awesome sound system was really like being there. I would absolutely go again, and I would think about all the other bands that could do this kind of a treatment. My one warning is that they tell you to come out a little bit early and to get food and drink at this arena that they've constructed before you go in and to see the show. There weren't really any options knowing my food restrictions. So I probably wouldn't recommend doing that for anybody who does have food restrictions. I would recommend eating in the city center before you get on the tube. I cannot wait to get back to London. It is one of my favorite cities, and now that I've done this, I feel like I can actually go there with Laura, with the kids, and feel like we have a stress-free opportunity for travel because of how well so many different restaurants and venues take care of people with dietary restrictions. I'm glad to have shared a little bit of that with you, and I can't wait to see you again. Before I wrap up, I do need to say we have some incredible videos coming up from Walt Disney World and from Disney Cruise Line in just a couple of weeks. You gotta subscribe. You gotta know when those are coming out. So before we wrap up, make sure you go and you hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye!